notes here, see what it's on here too. And another issue, I guess, would be Victoria Park. Do we need another one? Because if you look at the number of comprehensive plan, from 2017 on out to 20 years of the comp plan, it's just expecting decline in growth of Lake County. It's not expecting population growth. And the population growth, when it does reach the build out according to the comprehensive plan, it would only be 6,500 people. That's, if we're declining now, that's going to be way out in the future beyond this comprehensive plan when we ever reach those numbers. So is there demand there for people who want these apartments with projections of declining population for the city? Victoria Park's successful, but can't guarantee that's going to happen again. So those are just some issues in my mind. Go through my house, I would see that's on this slide. Any questions you can ask, I'll let you hear. I don't care. I don't know. Get all. There's other things I really would like to see it studied though, because of that. For my findings in staff report, see what she has. It goes, kind of looks at the village rate of rate per $1,000 home value being paid. We are in both cases as far as the increase expected between 2022 and the previous year, and as well as the rate itself that they're both above the average rates for other municipalities in the community. So any way they can come forward, that can even that out, take some of the burden off the residents. Greatly appreciated. And I guess the other thing I was thinking, and it's a good example too of Maitland Center, for example, or Heath Road that were mentioned, but they all have the mix of uses in that employment center. It's not all just multifamily. They have restaurants, so the people in these 10-story offices to the north can go have their laundry done. They can go get a meal without setting foot on I-4, without setting foot on Orange Camp, or near the roads in Lake Helen. So that balance needs to be there too, and it shouldn't be just the city doing it and repeat those benefits. Those office towers are going to need more than just beds there. It's going to require things that need to smart growth, things where they can get to on foot for the lunch break, pick up some groceries on the way home as they're leaving the office, etc. Really just take the extra burden off the roads in that way. And it could happen. I just haven't really seen that in the plan yet. Would like to see a little more diversity that way. I think that pretty much wraps up my responses.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
And now the city administrator has a few words.
Mr. City Administrator, you have the floor.
Mayor, members of the commission, I want to highlight a couple of things that I think need to be called to your attention that are not correctly given to you, but perhaps just overlooked. First of all, there was some compliments that I heard correctly with the James Moore and the financial report, and how it really pointed out the obvious that this was going to produce some $500,000 in the fifth year. And I have to tell you that the finance report was put together by your city staff, not by James Moore. And I only say that because we made an attempt to go to every expert in every field, whether it be law enforcement, the fire, garbage. We went to the developer himself, got their costs, their prices, their anticipated build-out rate, the number of units of every particular size. They're all 2 bedroom, 2 bath, both apartments and the townhouses, at least the way they are now. They did say that they're going to be 3-story, but they might be 5-story. But we put that all together, and James Moore then took the assumptions that we had come up with and came up with the final number. The only number that I really took exception to that Moore had put in was the inflation rate. He calculated at the 5th year 5%. Now, 5% for municipalities is a really big number. We rarely give cost of living rates an example of more than 3%. So I lowered it to 3%. The difference is 511 to about 570 in the 5th year. It's not a magnificent difference, but it is different. But I wanted to point out that that particular study done by James Moore really was an effort of the city to be as objective as possible in coming up with numbers that really would be produced by ad valorem taxes. Now, I need to point out at this time that ad valorem taxes are really 2 different creatures. We're talking about commercial property or residential property. There was a trend that started in California in the 1970s with Prop 13. And basically what it said, and what it has said since then, is people in their home shouldn't have to pay, they shouldn't have to pay the cost of services. That should really be borne by the businesses, by the commercial products and services that go into that. And so with Prop 13, it got so ridiculous in California that building permits, the cost of building permits is actually more than the cost of construction of an addition to a home or home itself. That's how the cities had to raise the money, because they were no longer able to raise it through property tax. Same thing is happening here now. How many years later? 30, 40 years later? We've had Save Our Homes. It freezes your increase in your property tax on residential property only, not commercial, to 3%. If it goes down, your value goes down, your taxes go down. It happened to me personally, and I thought that was a wonderful idea. My taxes went one time from I can't remember, it was 5,000 down to 3,000 or something like that. Really neat. That's fantastic. I love that again. Right? Difficulty is going back up. It only goes back up to 3% a year. Now, great for the residential property owner, not so good for the people that depend on that for the services that are required to buy those properties. Again, commercial properties are not affected. Their property taxes will go up according to the value of the property as it goes up every year. And hence, city attorney and I were talking one time about, I think we Save Our Homes. And it's not really a lowering of the taxes of the residential, it's a transfer of the cost to the commercial properties. And they are picking up the difference of what should be paid equally by both residential and commercial. So the numbers that we produced in that finance report that said 500,000, 570, whatever it is, those are optimistic, assuming no differences in the continuing trend of residential property taxes and getting a good deal, if you will, through a very legitimate process in state legislature, constitutional amendments. At the PLDRC, we talked about, there was an item on the ballot in November that said everybody who is a first responder, a policeman, a fireman, a school teacher, a medical worker, a prison guard, and there were a couple others too. In those categories of employment, they would get an extra $50,000 exemption on their property tax. Wow, that was neat. They only lost by 1%. Instead of having 59% or 60 as needed, it got 59%. The check today has not yet been reintroduced in the state legislature, which starts on March 7th. But there are other bills already introduced in the legislature, which would grant additional exemptions to residential property. And the trend is so obvious, it just cannot be ignored. Residential property will produce less and less revenue through that form of taxation. So what I have given you through James Moore is a situation based on today's reality, but I can tell you it's not going to continue. That continuing trend, citizens have the right to lower their own taxes, they're going to take advantage of it. I don't blame them, I would too. I think I voted for the same thing. As one of the 59%. So that is the difficulty when we talk about commercial property and residential property. It's not a steady state universe in residential. It's a declining trend. When the people who pay are having the right to lower their own taxes, they'll take that option every time. The couple other things, the PLPRC, first of all, I need to just mention to the commission, it hasn't been mentioned yet, you are aware of your December meeting and your informal vote during the workshop and your attitude toward this particular project. You, by 4 opinions to 1, suggested that it not go forward. Totally informal, very preliminary. At the PLDRC, citizens, some of whom are here tonight, they had a formal presentation identical to the one I think you're receiving tonight, and they considered the effect on the community, they considered everything that was given to them both by the city staff and by the applicant, and they voted 5-1 to deny the recommendation, to use the recommendation. So you have that. And I have to tell you too, you've had a couple of comments made to you about, or at least the inference, the city staff has held this project up. We haven't allowed them to go forward. We've been an obstacle to progress. And what we have done is asked them to comply with code. To this day, they are required to have a traffic study before you. They're required to have a site plan before you. They have done neither. You do not have a complete application. And that, in a small community like ours, maybe you can say, okay, let's just look at it without that. But when they make a comment about we're supposed to sit down and talk about a plan, there is no plan. There never has been a plan. We've had perhaps 5 to 7 different maps. There's 11 by 17 maps. And this is the land, that's us, and here's all these things here. That is not a plan. That is a map. That is a pretty picture. So when you have people who are professionals in the area of development, talking with city people who are professionals in the development of their city, you need to have the same foundation. You need the same requirements. Traffic analysis, yeah, they're expensive. So we said, okay, for the very preliminary one, we'll go forward without that. The site plan, there's email I had, they submitted their application on August 18th. 56 days later, I got an email saying, it's been 56 days and you haven't yet done anything with this application. And I wrote back because you still haven't completed the application. And that email retrend went on to probably 2 months ago. We still thought they should have a hearing before the commission, and I said, you still haven't submitted a final complete package. So, obviously this choice is yours, but the city, I think, would miss a golden opportunity not to have a commercial development within the commercially designated area. We don't have that much commercial property in the city. Eventually, the residential property tax is going to decline. The study just says our residential population will decline, but the residential ad valorem certainly will decline over the next number of years. We need that commercial base, which is not going to have the same attraction to voters. We're going to want to shift the burden, and they have now for how long has Save Our Homes been in effect? 20 years, and continuing to shift the burden to the commercial. We don't have it. We need it. And if there's something not producing something right now, it will come. That property is going to be attractive at some point, and an application will be made by the property owner. And another good point is we don't have any animosity to these people, even though you may think after what I just said that we do. These are the property owners in our city, and they're going to be coming back to us hopefully with a great commercial project. So what we're saying is residential is not in the best interest of the city. The commercial they originally had asked for, were granted. That's what we need. We'd love to see them come back with that sort of application. And those are things I think that need to be shared. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. City Administrator. Mr. Dunn, I will give you a minute to reply, but we do have a lot of blue cards, so please be brief.
Well, let's say this, there is absolutely no such thing as a site plan requirement for a comp plan tax amendment change, period, in any city, in any county in the state of Florida. And the email chains all speak for themselves. We've had the, oh, we lost the application. We've had, oh, they withdrew the application. We've had that repeated nonsense that they didn't submit a site plan. We've never had the opportunity to have a meeting with city staff to talk about a site plan, which is what we went through for months, saying, please meet with us, sit down and talk. Some of these things are step 7 and step 8 things. For instance, first of all, we've been through this process before, this group of people, this applicant and myself and my firm, with an annexation, a comp plan change, and a PD to get the Audubon approved in the first place. And we are doing it in exactly the same form and fashion, submitting the exact same documents that we did. The only thing that's changed is who the city administrator is. That's it. So I told you I was going to take the high road, but I'm not going to let a blatant false statement be made. It's just not true. Second of all, I do agree with everything you said about trends in tax breaks on residential. It's 100% true. But go back to what I said at the very beginning. We can't keep talking about this anecdotal comparison from commercial to residential that is talking about single-family properties that have the benefit of all those exemptions and the things that the brilliant people in California do, right? Multifamily is not subject to homestead exemptions or widows exemptions or any of those other things. It goes to our point. This project, just the apartment component alone, would more than double the existing commercial tax base of Lake Ellen by itself. It more than doubles the existing tax base. So those things, I agree, he's right. But it's very confusing to someone who says, oh, well, I guess I'm going to send the residential, we'll actually bring the taxes in. The townhomes may be subject to that somewhat, right? Because they're eligible for homestead exemption. But the multifamily is not. For all practical purposes, it's the same thing as commercial. So I think that's important to bring out. I'm more than happy to reiterate, I did some of you, I think, were on the commission at the time. There was a snapshot in time at one point where I laid out the timeline for the Super Bowl, and I'm happy to do it again. I wanted to focus on the fact that we're here tonight, but it is not in my interest or Mr. Hurley's or anyone else's to not submit something that's required. There is never a site plan requirement for comp plan change. So to make any kind of inference that tonight what we're doing is incomplete is blatantly false. Now, I'm not going to say he's lying. He might just not know what he's talking about. But it's not true. Thank you.
The effort to move things forward, I will begin working our way through the blue cards. We do have 10 to 15 cards, so we do ask if you are speaking to please, you've got your full 3 minutes, but if you run out of things to say, don't just say it all again. We'll start with Mr. Sniffen. And after Mr. Sniffen will be Kelly Frasca.
Thank you. Just got a couple of things to say about this. Hope I can get it all in 3 minutes. First thing is that, I know that sometimes the park will force in the city, and that's one thing I don't want us to do at this point in time, is that, yeah, it sounds all good and fine and everything like that. Things you need to consider is that stretch of road that's there is actually have dots. You know how Florida likes, state of Florida likes to help us in doing things. They really don't. It's going to take a while. That all that traffic, 900 more people traveling there, making the bottleneck on all that area, and how hard it would be for us residents to cross over that bridge. They're probably going to have to put a light in there. We always said we didn't want a light within our own city. So that is,
Roundabout.
yeah. Well, another roundabout. Yeah. So we'll have another 2 or 3 accidents a week. The other thing is this: is that we talked about, he already talks about the high density land use and how there's 4,000 homes within Victoria Park. Well, that's spread out over many acres. You know, here we're talking about 1,000 residents through this small area. And I would also like for you all to consider the impact on our environment when this comes to this. You know, we're constantly knocking down the woods. I know in commercial they're going to do the same thing, but on what scale? And will they fall under our gateway community? You know, these are the things we have to look into. I know this, I'm with the Department of Public Works now, but I really am against this. This is not what that area is designed for. Our viable is our comprehensive plan. We do not have to change it. We don't. You know, yeah, it'd be nice to get an extra $500,000. You know, everybody's going around inflation numbers. People really know what the true inflation rate is at this point in time. How long is it going to take for that to come down? So all these costs are going to incur throughout the time over these 5 years. So I really would like for you all, I mean, we can nip it in the bud right now and say, no, we want it commercial. Come back to us with a commercial plan. It's like an investor. They invested in this land to put what they thought they could put. Sorry, so sad. The economy started going tanking. They can't afford to do it. So now they want us to change our plans. You know, it'd be like me going to a stock and say, oh, we lost money. You know, can I get my money back? Or can we change the rules? So don't change the rules on this. Our comprehensive plan is our Bible. It is what we, the residents, decided that we wanted. We don't need an investor to come in here and dictate to us on what they want. Keep it commercial and keep it how we want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sniffen. Next is Kelly Frasca, and after Ms. Frasca will be Larry Smith.
Kelly Preston, John Street, Lake Dunn, forgot this is working. First off, I have to say thank you, Mr. Abbott, for coming forward tonight and making those comments regarding the change of 5% to 3%, because that was not what was presented previously, and it wasn't transparent. I don't believe this commission had received the 5% document showing that growth of 5%. Am I wrong? I don't know.
No, the one we get is 3.
Yeah, we only received the 3%. And the difference that the 5% and 3% makes, I can rattle off some numbers for you really quickly. The difference between the incremental revenues for the 4th year showed 15% difference up. And for the difference between the 5th year was 32,000. And when we go into expenditure, the 4th year, we're at 7,300. And in the 5th year, we are at 15,184. So that changes our net fiscal impact projection to 7,412 in the 4th year and an increase of 17,712 for that 5th year. Amazingly enough, in the 4th year, our sales tax does not increase. But go on from there. I did, however, find that transparency prior to him coming up and speaking today was a surprise on that. And I commend him for coming forward and speaking the truth. But how are we to trust these numbers when we have these reports given to us? If they can easily be altered. Or how does the transparency within our government? Was our city administrator directed to alter these numbers? If so, who made that request? And how was it made? This is just one example of Mr. Abbott's dishonesty. However, we trust any reports generated under his, can we trust any reports generated under his service? I myself find it troublesome.
If you would,
And I
keep your
want to
remarks on
finish,
the Orange Camp Point project.
That is what I'm talking about. But you
It
just
wasn't for a moment.
You just took 5 seconds from me, so I'm going to finish this. I find this troublesome. which is another reason for Mr. Abbott's termination.
Again, if you would speak to the Orange Camp Point project.
That's what this was about. This was about the altering of the numbers in the 5-year fiscal projections.
Okay, thank you.
So it was about the Orange Point project. That's
Okay.
what the document provided.
I understand your logic there. Thank you. Mr. Smith, and after Mr. Smith, Ron Perrick.
One of the things I wanted to bring up is address. Excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry. If you could state your name and address for the record, that's something I forgot to mention.
Larry Smith, 228 Abraham.
Thank you.
We're having trouble understanding how the development would even succeed in this location. If the development is attempted, I would imagine that the resident population would be extremely transitory. And I say that because of the I-4 noise. The last job that I had was working with Coulter as a landscape designer for the last phase of their development. And that phase bordered what is the cow pasture area, the employment center. That's 1/4 mile from I-4. Even though we designed an extremely dense landscape buffer, there are still many complaints from the residents concerning the I-4 noise. And I doubt that even a 12-foot high wall would have made that much difference. That buffer now is extremely thick, it's about 20, 25 feet tall. There is more transition out of that area of the gardens than any other areas of the gardens. Now consider that the commercial development in question, or the residential development if you vote to rezone, is literally sitting on I-4. It's 200 feet from I-4. It would be tantamount to a train running through your community 24/7, every day, every week, every month, every year. Again, even with a thick landscape buffer or a wall or both, it's going to be a very noisy property and not conducive to quality residential development.
Mr. Perrick, and next will be Carrie Marshall.
Sir, is it possible to have this?
Ask staff if you would. Miss-
Oh, you're all right. Me too.
Are you Carrie Marshall?
Yes.
You'll be after Mr.
I'm
Perrick.
sorry.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear.
I'm Ron Perrick, 451 West Michigan. I know our sound system isn't very good. I know people are having trouble hearing. I appreciate all the Victoria Park residents that are signed, passionate about it. But we're concerned with the taxpayers that pay the bills here in our community. And that's what we got to focus on. What can we do to increase our tax base? But I didn't hear anything about the taxes that we were going to get compared to if it was commercial. It was presented that commercial would be residential would be higher than commercial as they're presenting it. Have we done a study on this yet? That's a question. Also, 1,000 extra people. It's going to bring more business to our area. Maybe we can get a restaurant downtown. Maybe we vitalize our downtown. Have a couple of restaurants. We got a cemetery across the road. We're going to move our welcome to Lake Helen on the other side of the road. We have a cemetery over there. Now we can have an apartment homes. We need it. Yeah, we spend money like crazy. We need it.
Thank you, Mr. Perrick. Mr. Marshall, and after Mr. Marshall will be Tim Taylor. No, it's no problem. If you would state your name and address.
Carrie Marshall, I live in Victoria Park. A lot of time was spent by your city attorney and the developer's attorney explaining why we should not be concerned about that area green up there. It would be virtually impossible to rezone it. There's a Victoria Park agreement in place. Everybody would have to sign off. But I want you to think about the worst case scenario, that this high density development gets approved, and that sets a precedent, and any smart developer would point at that and say, well, I want to put high density development up there in that green area. So let's think about that for a minute. The project on the table equates to about 1,000 people in approximately 25 acres. That's the 150 townhouses and the 300 apartments. If you were to lay that kind of concept on top of 57 acres, you would be looking at approximately 1,500 to 2,000 additional residents in addition to the 1,000 projected down there. The land owns a little triangle up there above that red area, 2 acres, that is for a future extension of frontage road to get access eventually up to that property. There is plans for something to happen up there, and a precedent that is set to allow high density residential development down here could be opening Pandora's box for Lake Ellis. You could wind up with a group of people who, it was previously mentioned, are sick and tired of listening to I-4, and they want something done about it. They want a sound bucket built from Orange Camp Road as far up as you can go, 12 feet tall. You've seen them down towards Orange City on the side of the freeway. So what does that cost? And they need a bond to pay for it. 20 million, 30 million. A $25 million bond paid back over 30 years is $1.1 million a year in a payment. It takes a heck of a lot of millage to pay $1 million and $100,000 a year so that people don't have to listen to that noise. It costs you nothing to keep the comprehensive plan and the zoning the way it is. You keep control of the city. If those 3,000 people don't get what they want, they may elect at large somebody who will give it to them. Don't buy into, well, you can stop this process anytime. Well, this is a good time. I wouldn't go to the next step if I were concerned that something unexpected might happen in the future. Please send a message to the market that you want a commercial project. Don't change your comprehensive plan. Let them change their proposal and bring you something that you want to look at. Keep control of your zoning, your financial planning, your political and strategic direction for the gem of Florida. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Taylor, and next will be Anthony Troy. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Tim Taylor. I live at 232 Abingham in Victoria Park. The map up there, the little finger that sticks right down below the red area, that's where I live. I probably live the closest home to this entire potential change. You know, my point is always the city has wanted to make this a commercial area. You're being asked to change it to residential because the gentleman who owns the land, his project fell through. Now, is that the reason you should make a change? Because his project fell through because we have a pandemic. You're making complete, you're trying to change the entire makeup of the decision that was made to make this commercial because he went through a bad economic time. Now, I feel sorry for him. He's tried to sell the property. He said he's trying to sell it all over the world. No one wants to buy it. The only people that are interested in developing it are real estate developers. That's not a reason to change your plans because of his problem. He pays a lot of taxes right now. I understand that. You know, the whole thing right now is an asset for Lake County. You're making money off of that property right now. It doesn't cost you anything. The minute you put the residential property on there, you've got to have police, fire, schools, everything. I live very close to it. It's a very, very tight area. Have any of you ever been to that property? Been out there on that property? It's almost all swamp as well. But 1,000 people coming out of there every morning to go to school and go to work, it's impossible. It is really, really tight down there. And I know his attorney mentioned, we would just like to start this process. We're going to talk a lot more about where we're going to put the housing, and maybe we're only going to have a few houses. But I saw a plan that they brought to the last meeting, or it was here somewhere. Every square inch of that property was going to be high-density residential. They weren't thinking about putting a little bit over here, maybe some commercial buildings. We have a very nice set of commercial buildings just up the street there across from Victoria Park. That's what it should look like. They're one story. Keep it commercial. They're one story. You can have restaurants, medical offices, all of that would fit very well right there. Yes, it might take a little while to flesh out. I understand that. But that's what it was designed to do. It's going to be commercial. It's going to be an asset for your community, not a big expense. Also, there's a huge amount of wildlife in there. I've got trail cameras out there. I've got deer, bear, river otter, and it's all legal that flies around in there too. And if he nests in there, you're not gonna build anything in there for a while. That's just the way it is. But it's a beautiful piece of property. It's mostly swamp. During the last hurricane that came through, our pond was literally the very, very top, and we're right above this property. And it had to overflow into the swamp. If this had been turned into all concrete, or whatever they're planning on doing, it would have flooded all of our homes, because our water would have nowhere to go. And I don't think you want to be responsible for flooding Victoria Park. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Next will be Anthony Troy and then John Clifford.
Anthony Troy, 421 Roseville Lane. I've lived here my whole life, and I take pride in the town that we do live in. I'm sure that all of you guys have noticed if you come drive through town around 2 or 3 o'clock, how much traffic there is recently. If we add this high-density community right there, not only will they be sending their kids to school here, adding more traffic, they'll be driving through town. And then I also just want to point out that everybody that lives here, if you want to go get some food or go shopping, you got to hop on I-4 or go down Orange Camp, go 15 minutes away. We have this right now designed for commercial, and I say that everything happens for a reason, so it seems like us being in control of what happens over this area, we have the opportunity to have something better than just the fastest, quickest way to make money, you know? I believe that if you take your time to really think it out, that there might be more than just this one option. I understand that it would bring in money, but I just think that we should, while we have the opportunity to stop this and take the time to really think, that we probably should, and we should take pride in where we're at. And if you look around, everything in between us and food or shopping is just houses. So while we have this nice area, we might as well take the time to be different and put something that's more valuable there.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. Next will be John Clifford and then Larry Long. If you would, please state your name and address. That doesn't help. These are not working, so.
I own the property at 171 West Pennsylvania Avenue in McAllen. It's a little green cottage. My wife and I have an office and an art gallery there. I also own a house in Victoria Gardens, 1375 Breaker Point, which happens to be the closest house to the new power line and probably the closest house to the road that we've been talking about, the Buckle Road. So I think I have a fairly significant vested interest in the property. But none of that really matters to what I'd like to say. I have been in the resort development business since 1975. I worked for Mount Snow, Killington, Everett Valley, the Canyons. And I have sat in I don't know how many meetings over that 4-year period where I was the person trying to convince the town that you needed to give us the adjustments that we wanted, needed to allow us to build what we wanted to build under the terms that we wanted to build. And we spent an inordinate amount of money trying to convince our towns that what we were trying to do was in their best interest. Now, I can assure you what we were trying to do was in the best interest of our corporation. And I can tell you, as much as I empathize with Mr. Hurley and his dilemma, having bought this particular piece of land, I don't particularly think he is all that interested in the best interest of McAllen. Now, I will also tell you, I was the vice president of marketing for Centex Homes, the largest home builder in Central Florida. When I went to work for them, we were doing 31,000 houses across the country.
our largest division in Central Florida. I have seen all of the marketing data for what is going to happen in Central Florida from now until about 2050, okay? You people are sitting in the heart of probably one of the 5 most developable real estate areas in the country. You have a gem beyond what you really understand. And I don't think anybody in this town should be sitting here thinking, well, we really need to do this because we need the tax credit. You're going to be gentrified, you're going to see your real estate properties double in the next 5 years, and you're going to see a different town. So please, don't get fooled, don't buy into the need. Just move on and wait for this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clifford. Next is Larry Long, and then Ms. Troy.
First of all, I hope you can sit there. Swear and shake your head.
Please, sir, if you would address your remarks to the chair.
Well, first of all, it's going to be a terrible draw.
What's your name, sir?
I'm sorry, if you would state your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
I'm sorry. Larry Long, 169 North Lakeview, just down the street. It's going to be another draw on the Blue Springs water system. You know that. We really don't need that problem. And as far as having apartments, well, it's just maybe out of question. And Mr. Hurley, nobody put a gun to your head at 5 minute time. So you're sitting. As far as I'm concerned, the houses, we just don't need them. We have enough. And it's not going to help our community one iota to have all these houses. There's a little bit of commercial in there, fine, but otherwise, it should just stay like you had planned in the first place. Go ahead and put your dealership there. That's all I ask.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Next, Ms. Troy, and then will be Todd Preston. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Natalie Troy. I live at 1035 Mackenzie Road. And if I may, I'd like to show you all a little piece of Lake Helen history. It says, keeping it rural, a great place to raise your family. You all live in Lake Helen for a reason. Regardless of what brought you here, you've chosen to stay here for a reason and sit in your commissioner's seat because you love Lake Helen. That is why I am standing here tonight. It's because I love Lake Helen for everything that it is. We are surrounded by overdevelopment. While tonight's subject is focused on this one area proposed by the applicant, please consider all of the other current and proposed developments surrounding us, across from the State College, around Lake Winnemucet, all along Kepler, and on the edge of Casadega. All of these thousands of new residents added to Lake Helen are only going to make it harder for us, the existing residents, to live. Increased traffic going up and down our already busy roads, increasing the already growing concern of speeding down our residential streets, crowding our schools, and making it longer and more difficult to get to and from our homes and live our daily lives. This proposed development is essentially an additional community being added to our city. Respectfully, it sounds like the applicants made a bad investment and now they're making it our problem. They do not know what Lake Helen is about. They are here temporarily to make money and then leave. We are here to live, raise our children, retire, and enjoy our lives in our quaint and charming city. It's going to be our mess to deal with after they leave. Is the potential increase in tax revenue worth the unknown troublesome consequences besides the already obvious ones? Your elected term is temporary, but your decision on the subject tonight will have a permanent effect on Lake Helen forever. Once that land is developed, we will not get it back. This is important. Lake Helen is a historic, safe, neighborly community of single-family residences We're here for the long term. 450 plus units made of mostly apartments and some townhomes are going to bring many people that are temporary. We are not a high-density community. That is what has always set us apart from everywhere else. Let's play the long game here, as these decisions have a domino effect on everything surrounding it. This is a bad idea being packaged as a saving grace to Lake Helen, and I feel it is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Ms. Troy. Next is Todd Preston. And if you would, sir, state your name and address for the record. I know.
Good evening, Todd Preston, 352 Connecticut Avenue. I had 3 points to make tonight, but we'll shorten that up a bit. I just wanted to point out a couple things that I heard and rebut them. The homes in Victoria Park, they're also built on swamp land. Also, I was kind of astounded by the city administrator's rebuttal. So I reserved most of my comments, except I'm glad I had good roots on it. I want to point out that homestead exemptions are reset every time a home sells, so they're not cast in stone. They don't continue to diminish. They get reset their current value. So, that being said, when you speak to the citizens tonight about whether to make a change or not, please be honest with them and tell them about the multi-million-dollar loan you're negotiating in order to make badly needed repairs and upgrades to the infrastructure throughout the city. Tell them about the rather large one-time special assessment you're considering so that they know what to expect if you don't make a change. Tell them about the very significant increase you're considering for stormwater management this year if you don't make a change. Tell them about the trash assessment that's being renegotiated right now and the highly probable increase that will come along with it this year if you don't make a change. Tell them about the expiring fire services contract that's up this year that nobody has mentioned anything about. It was a teaser rate when we signed on to it for 5 years the first time. That has to be renegotiated before the end of this year with a highly probable significant increase in assessments to every property owner. Please be honest with them and tell them how the operating costs, specifically payroll expenses, are outpacing revenue growth by a 3-to-1 margin. And that's right in this year's budget. You can look at the numbers in black and white. The second thing I want to address very briefly is the comp plan itself. As you all know, the plan is a guiding principle to a vision of the city's future. Within it are several quotable phrases that I'd like to point out. One, Lake Helen is struggling to strike a balance between maintaining its current standard of living, increasing the city's tax base to pay for much needed services that contribute to the area's high quality of life. 2, the city will have to act in such a manner that will balance growth management techniques with economic vitality to ensure the continued sustainability of government and citizens. And I'm out of time, so I'm not going to read the other 2. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Preston. I think we made it through everybody who was planned to speak. Mr. Dunn, would you like the floor? I'll let you have the floor again.
I just want to pull it back because first of all, I do very much appreciate the comments of citizens of Lake Helen. Going back to the very beginning, it's important to remember what we're here for and what we're not here for. And to talk about what's already there on the land. This is a down zoning potentially in intensity. This is a reduction in intensity of use of property. A switch from the automobile use to the residential use would be a reduction in the number of traffic roads. It would be a reduction in the height and blocking of the building. It would be a reduction in the impervious areas of the property. It would be a reduction in all of those things. I understand the sentiment fully of, I would rather see this be a park. It already has entitlements. And I want to go back to the one economic part too. The section that's the land section, so the red section is Lake Helen, the gray section beside it to the left is the land section across the line. It is already entitled for the exact type of uses you're saying you would like to have. The utilities were already paid by the developer to be extended to that corner of frontage road. They're right there on the corner. That is the closest and shortest and cheapest place to develop commercial land right now, and it has been for sale with all of those uses and entitlements for the last 5 years. And there are no contracts. And one of the biggest reasons is there aren't enough rooftops, there aren't enough trips. And Dan, Lawson Dan and I talked this morning for an hour about things and alternatives. And we'd love to have more conversations with the city about alternatives. We're open to suggestions. But the ones that are already the easiest to develop, unless there's that 500 butts and beds right beside it, even the convenience store isn't that interested in that corner. They need those some trips. There was going to be better because they were going to have more trips in and out of the auto mall that by a factor of about 40% more trips per day. But at least some trips is what's required. I know it's busy. I live on this side of town too. Then I go through the roundabout and I go down Orange Camp Road and I know what it's like when I be hung up in and out. I know what it's like turning off Peter Street exit from Maverick to looking to Orlando. I get it, and there is a busy peak time, and then a lot of times you basically have a picnic in the middle of Orange Camp Road here at certain times of the day, and that's why a lot of commercial people are interested. If we could develop it and sell it all 50 acres as commercial, it would be developed and sold. It really would. So if we can't compare parks and ponies to what we're proposing, because that's not a comparison. Right now, it's already entitled for commercial on that left half. It's already entitled for massively dense commercial on the Lake Helen side, and there's no demand. So what we're asking for is just to let the uses be representative of what the market is.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. I'll turn it back to the commission if any commissioners would like to share their opinions or ask questions, or the floor is open to the commissioners.
Started by zone.
Okay. If you want to go zone by zone, does everybody want to talk, or?
I'll be happy to talk.
Well, we'll start with Mr. Basso. The floor is yours.
I think every decision we make up here that's controversial has positive and negative impacts on this community.
Well, the mic's not working.
Can you hear me?
You'll have to really speak.
Okay. Every decision that brings conflict has positive and negative impact on the community. I would love everyone to be able to see all of the positive impact and all of the negative impact. You can't just look at it through your lens that supports your narrative if you're truly concerned about what's good for the whole of the community. I've said this for 15 years since I've been up here. The biggest problem we have in our community is our woefully inadequate infrastructure. The price tag to fix that infrastructure goes up every single year. We're looking at $15 million right now, and we're not even talking about sanitary sewer. At some point, no matter how much traffic you think you're going to have, no matter what the negative impacts are, the things that are going to impact this community the most are our inability to get the funding that we need to fix the problems that we currently have. And I am open to a discussion on where that revenue is going to come from. Wide open for that discussion. I've been waiting 15 years to have it. Love to have it. This at least is an opportunity to start that. Is it the best one? Is it the one we want? Does it have no strings attached or no negative? No, it doesn't. But is it worth starting to solve some of our most significant problems? I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner Basso. Charlene? Well, zone 4.
Okay, so there has been some talk about our taxes going up. I was wondering if anybody could give me 3 or 4 instances where expenses and taxes have come down after adding to the population. Okay.
Yes, in order to have more taxes 2 years in a row, 18 and 19. After 7 years of raising them, we're pushing 9%.
I know, but I'm asking for 3 cities or someplace where taxes have come down after adding to the population. And then I also have a little math problem that I like to make things simple for myself. Our budget is 4.8 million. If you divide that by the 2,900 people we have, that comes out to $1,655 per person that we spend a year. If you add 500,000 to that, it brings it up to 5.3 million. Now, divide that by 3,900 because you're adding 1,000 people, and that comes out to $1,358 per person. So if you take the $1,655 that we're now spending and you subtract the $1,358, that gives you your $297 short per person. And in a year's time, that comes up to $1,158,300. So I don't see how this is going to be a great fix for us. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes, so the only comment that I have at this time is about the rooftops and the viability for commercial. I don't see how having 900 more when you have 4,000 already, how that is it's a fourth more, how that's enough to develop the commercial as is being implied.
Mr. Eckert?
Well, when you first spoke, you said that there's probably somebody up here that's sitting on that line that's not sure which way to go, and that's probably me. I've been looking at both sides of it. I've been watching the changes that are coming to the world. The population centers have been shifting. Florida's gaining the most people in the United States. They're moving out of the other states and coming to Florida. That's why we've had the big boom, housing prices going up because of the demand went up. And it's slowly slacking off now, but it's still there. There's also a generation change that's happening all around the world, mostly in the European and Eastern countries, but it's starting to show an effect in the United States and in the Central Florida area. When most of us were going through school and everything, we looked forward to getting our driver's license. Kids nowadays don't look forward to getting a driver's license. They don't have the car expense, they don't pay the insurance, they don't pay the gas things, they can use Uber. They would rather use Uber and live close to where they're going to party, where they're going to shop, where they're going to socialize. I would like to see multi-use going into the place. I don't like the restricted development. It can only be car sales with associated businesses. I think it needs to be expanded to allow more into our area. And I think that would open up the potential for sales a little bit better. And yeah, in the past few years, there's a lot of construction on Orange Camp Road, which has slowed a lot of people from wanting to come in because the developers wouldn't like to drive across and interfere with other developers that are working on the road. So the potential is there for it to grow. The growth is coming to our area from Orlando. 472 has a big development going in there on the Orange City corner of I-4 and 472. There's more developments coming in for the rest of it. DLAN has already poised itself for the development. And if you look at the map that's on there, that gray area on the north side of the green area, somewhere up in there is a section of DLAN. D-Land plan is, from what I was told, D-Land is planning for either townhouses or apartments going in on that north side. They're not planning on putting in an access road to get into our area up there. Unless we sit down with them and negotiate with them to make that route available on the north side also, so that if you look on the left-hand side of the picture, the curved part on the bottom next to the red, that's where that proposed road, DOT road, is going in at. That's what's going to open up that area above in the green. And the other dilemma is, I want to see Lake Helen stay the way it is. I like the way Lake Helen is. I've been here since 77 when I met my wife, and I like it. It's a quaint little community. It's nice, but I know that the world is changing. So if anything comes out of this, I would like, at least to the minimum, for our staff, attorney, and planner to work together and find out what can be done with our comp plan for that area to increase its sellability. And maybe even Mr. Hurley's group can join in on conversations, since it's their property, to try to get more sellability into the property so that he's not burdened with it much longer. As far as some of the other comments we've done about services that are going there, I know where all the fire apparatus is that's going to respond to anything that goes in there. And yeah, that little station that we have here by I-4 is not going to be the main one that's getting called. The closest aerial apparatus, whether it's a tower or a ladder, is downtown D-Land. They don't even keep it at the D-Land station that's over there on Taylor Road. The next one is Station 32 at the end of 472. They're at 1792. And the next closest one is Station 65 on Howland Boulevard in Deltona. And the one after that's at Station 61 in Deltona. So there's a lot of aerial apparatuses for the apartments and everything, but they're a distance away. So what's that going to require? Maybe fewer buildings, sprinkled apartments. They're definitely going to have to be sprinkled. And you also have to look at it that the apartments on the tax side of it are not residential. They're taxed as commercial. So they're not going to get all those benefits on the taxes as you do as owning a home. Now the townhouses, that's a different story. Those are sold as property. Those have the potential of doing it, and those are classified for residential. So that's a dilemma I sit in. Either way we go, I want to see some changes to make the property more viable and more useful for Lake Helen.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Eckert. I do have a couple of comments as well. When we did have a meeting and you came before us, I don't remember exactly when it was. It was shortly after I became mayor, about a year ago. You came before us to see what the consensus of the board at that time was, or the commission was at that time. And as has been stated, it was basically 4-1 against, although we were all interested and curious and wondering about it. That was, it was an unofficial vote. It was more of a straw poll, if you will. But it was basically 4-1 against. So proceeding with this, while I certainly understand it, I don't think we are responsible for that. A couple of things on the financial report prepared by James Moore. Initially, we had a meeting with developers, city staff, and one of the main questions was whether or not this would be profitable for the city, was our question. The developer job is to sell us on doing this project in one sense. And the idea was floated to create this financial study. They My understanding was that they were planning to do that. After the meeting, that those plans changed, and they declined to do that study. We were going to also hire James Moore to just simply review their numbers. That was what was talked about at that meeting. When they declined to move forward with that, which is certainly their right, when they declined to move forward with that, we as a commission decided to go ahead and engage James Moore to do this study on our own. Actually, staff did, as the city administrator said, staff did much of the work. James Moore created the finalized report, but it is very limited in scope, and it was never intended to be more than that, just a first look from our point of view to give us a little bit more information to go on. And even that cost us $10,000. If we were to get a study, as Mr. Patterson was suggesting, what we really need is a very significant study showing lots of different options and what those could provide. And it would get very expensive to produce. And we did not engage at that level. So it's nobody's fault. That's just kind of where we ended up. And there were some things said that I thought might be cleared up by that brief explanation. As Mr. Eckert said, I might be one of the people who would be on the fence for this as well. When I ran for mayor a year ago, we were in the middle of solid boom throughout everywhere. It just seemed like everything was booming and it would never end in building of homes. And everybody in Lake Helen that talked to me as I was on the campaign trail, like, you got to make sure this doesn't, we don't get this high density residential stuff here in Lake Helen. And as Mr. Eckert says, I like Lake Helen the way it is too. And I said over and over again, I am not and will not be in favor of high density development. Flip side of that, as Mr. Hurley has said, much of this was never in Lake Helen. It was annexed in as part of a project that didn't work. That's not our problem. It is his problem, but that's true too. It was brought in under a difficult time with good faith and with the hopes that could be done. It hasn't worked out. The auto mall being that could be done. That hasn't worked out. No fault there. It's just reality. COVID and economics have made that no longer a potential. This would be a boon financially in many ways for the city. Commissioner Basso is right. That extra $500,000 a year is enticing. Your math, Commissioner Bishop, was very interesting. I will look at that again. I did find that very interesting. I did say many times, as you mentioned, Mr. Dunn, that residential doesn't make money for a city. That is a maxim almost, or an axiomatic almost. High density apartments, very different. I get that. But it does stress the fire, and particularly police, which fire is really a county issue, and we do that by assessment. It's basically pure pass-through. Police, we do have all in-house, and it'd be very different. Police requirements are basically however many people you got, there's a direct ratio with how much police services you have to provide. So this increase of 50% in our residents would probably create an increase of 50% in our police budget. That's just my math. And the police budget is already 40% of the total budget of the city. So it's significant. I don't think that was quite reflected properly in this study. Again, all of these numbers in this study, and Ms. Frasca, your question, how can these numbers change? These are projections, and projections, it's modeling, and modeling is just putting together assumptions and seeing what it spits out. Well, let's think of it this way and see what spits out and what thinks of this way. That's all it is. So the fact that it can change, I don't think creates a lack of trust. It's just an understanding that we have to have that these numbers are pure, not fantasy, but pure projection. We do try and do as an expert a job as we can in creating them, but they are just projections. And those assumptions were made by us because we were the ones that ended up making the report. If the developer had wanted to come up with different assumptions, they could have made the report and used that as a selling process. I did like your comments, sir, that you are here to sell this project to us. That there's nothing immoral about that. That's where you are. That's the nature of this whole scenario. We don't disrespect that. We do have differing viewpoints of all of these things. So where one person says one thing, we say another. I think that's more that point of view rather than anybody trying to be disingenuous in any way. If we've come across as disingenuous, it certainly was unintentional to the best of my knowledge. So the question is before us. Do we want to proceed? Mr. Eckert, or Commissioner Eckert.
Some of the history on that property out there. In 1992, I ran for Commissioner Zone 2 in Lake Helen. This was when that was all swamp and cattle land out there. I ran on the premise that Lake Helen should annex all the way over to Martin Luther King for the purpose, because I think it was Arvida was going to develop the area. And their proposal for their houses and what they were going to give Lake Helen made sense. I didn't win the election because nobody in Lake Helen wanted that in their town. So Victoria Park went to Elam instead of Lake Helen. But they were going to provide the water, they were going to provide the sewer plant, they were going to provide the fire station, and they were going to give it to Lake Helen after the development was built. If that would have happened back then, we wouldn't be having these arguments now.
Yep.
But it didn't, and that's part of history. So that gives you, the guys who live in Victoria Gardens could have been letting in Lake Helen residents back then, but it didn't work out that way.
I didn't know that. I find it somewhat humorous because I've been wanting to annex up towards to the fairgrounds and down to Catalina. But
tried pushing that too.
Yeah. And mostly to create a buffer. But that's, again, projecting into the future. So the question before us is whether or not to actually, Mr. Attorney, would you restate the question before us as far as this resolution goes? Or
the ordinance for you is to amend the comprehensive plan to add residential as a use under the economic or the EC plan use.
Thank you. So we have okay.
Would you speak again to the number of the units concept? I'm sorry, just thinking up. My question is, part of the conversation early on when Mr. Simpson was speaking was to limit the number of units that are in that whole section. So when we talk about the other 80 acres and how it's developed, if those total number of units are all used up in this, then by law, by design, we, short of somebody else coming in and changing the rules again, you would not be able to do that in the other area. Am I?
Correct. The what's proposed is a total of 452 residential units in the employment center land use. So it's not so many units per acre.
Right.
You see a lot of times. And that would allow that to cover all the employment center land use area with that many units per acre. This is for the entire employment center land use, we're allowed 452 units
Period.
total. And that is what is being proposed. The concept is that's what would go into this development. So if they used up all of the residential units, there would be no residential units left over to go to any other area of the employment center.
I did have a question relating to those numbers as well. On page 17 of our total packet, page 2 of this particular portion of the packet, there's a little table on section 1, and it says in the middle of that is potential residential units. In the employment center, 452. Right below that, total potential residential units, 1,279 is struck through, and 1,731 is what would replace it. I don't understand those two numbers.
I believe it's 1,279 is the existing, this is a part of a total chart that has all different types of residential. And before that, that chart had employment centers 0 in the residential. So we add 452 to that, and when you add the 452 to the existing chart, that totals 1,279, that comes up to 1,731. We got 452 to it, so we're adding 452 more residential units to the projected 1,279 residential units. And I believe this is on vacant land in Lake County. So if you look at all the, land use categories, and there's maybe 10, 15 of them in there. All the vacant land we have, we projected before this proposed change, we would have 1,279 new residential units in Lake County. By making this change, we're increasing it 452, so we have so we're striking out 1,279, and the underlines the new language, which is 1,279 plus 452 equals your 1,730.
Thank you. That is not where my mind went when I was looking at this table. So thank you.
You need to see the whole chart.
I understand. Now, thank you. So do I have a motion to approve or deny this request?
I'll be more than happy to make a motion to approve the revising of the comp plan as read by the city attorney.
I have a motion to approve as read by this ordinance as read by the city attorney. Is there a second? Guys, for lack of a second, is there another motion?
Yes,
to-
I make a motion to deny ordinance 2023-02 on first reading.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Rutledge, a second from Commissioner Bishop to deny or not to pass this ordinance, 2023-02, I believe it is. Any further discussion? Call the question. Zone 1.
Yes.
Zone 2.
No.
Zone 3.
No.
Zone 4.
Yes.
Wow, it did make it to me. I didn't expect that.
Need another recess?
I'm thinking about that. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Tough being a tiebreaker, you
Sometimes. Well, we all had to make our vote. Mine's no tougher than any of yours. I want to explain it, but that's really not, this isn't really the time for this. Wow. I vote yes. I would like to explain it, but it's, again, not the time. I will ask for another 10-minute recess. We'll restart at top of the hour. I know that's disappointing. It's very disappointing. I'm sorry, but we denied their motion. We denied the passes for the ordinance.
I'm glad I'm not you.
I'm glad I'm not me sometimes. Well, that was tough for all of us. I mean, the whole deliberative process, that's not an easy question. My easiest answer would have been to say, push it down the road one more time, because we did have that option, but boy, that opens up Pandora's box. I mean, too many promises not to do that. I mean, too many times I promised, no way, not like hell. That's really just what carried it for me. No, I understood it. You explained it well. Yeah.
Because I was surprised there was so much silence. I thought there was so much to say something about. I thought it made perfect sense on a simple level.
Yeah, it did. It did make perfect sense. I don't know if Rick's ever going to come back.
I know.
He's upset, and I get it. I understand why. Yeah. Yeah. And I understand why. This is just as he stated, and I'm not, this is not out of line for us to talk about what he said. Yeah. I've only had, in the 6 years I was on the commission and the past year, I've really only had 2 votes that were hard. I don't even remember what the first one was. It was 15 years ago.
I was holding my breath. I was like, am I going to have to get that Apple meeting?
It was inappropriate for me to take that long, but I just really didn't expect it to come to me. And also, I really expected to have my mind changed in this discussion. I was open-minded coming into this discussion, and it really was not changed. I did. Yes, sir.
That was suspense. I thought you were going to open the Miss America card or something like that.
But do a Steve Harvey?
Wait, no,
that's not what I meant.
Or I was going to start doing the drum roll down there for you. This is just so I can show you. Yeah. So
no, when you explained it, you tried to put it.
Just to show you, right now, and this is what when they came to us and said we think we can do, because the language says other supporting uses, we can do residential. It's because our employment center says projected a potential residential unit 0.
Right.
I said, so that doesn't
the math wouldn't work anymore.
Well, it just says, that tells me we're not planning on residential uses in here. So, but these are the different residential uses, all these different land uses, and these are all the potential residential lots we have. It comes down to the total set. So when you add that 400 and whatever in there, it increases that lot. So that's what I just want to show you.
And that does make perfect sense.
Do you want me to do the math for you?
Your math? She wants to show her math. She really does. It's the old show your work
The thing
thing.
that I thought about with what you're saying, doesn't that then just reduce the cost of operations for the city to all the residents by $300?
No, we're short on it. That's what we're spending now.
No, but
And we add,
you have
Add
more.
1,000.
Right now, the cost of operations spread over the current residents total $1,600 per person.
yeah, there were some holes in that.
So
No, because you're adding $500,000.
you're adding 500, but 1,000 people. So that you're spreading that cost, but when you divide it up, now it only costs $1,300 per person. That's how I understood what you're saying.
I understand what you're saying too, and
I know.
and neither one of you are completely right or wrong. There's a middle ground in
Yes,
there.
there's two ways.
That's what I was saying. I was like,
Listen, I went to school in this building right here. This is Lake Helen now.
And honestly, if we spent, I would say closer to $40,000 or $50,000 on a study, that would really go into all of the details they need, and
you know what
give us a whole bunch.
Honestly, I would convince them. Yes.
I mean, it's always a guess.
But
You're right. You're absolutely right.
It's not. If it was to say, if our rule said, if the project shows this much net revenue to the city, then it can be approved. Okay, then we got it. Of course, it's going to show there's going to be money coming in, but that's not even a criteria for the city.
No. It's really not. You're right.
Who brings us the most money?
Politically, it is.
Oh no, it is. I get why you want to look at it, but I told $2,000 on. You had to have some validity to get it. I said, you could just go take the millage rate, come up with 5 different values for the properties, then you're going to get the numbers. And I said, y'all can come up with the cost for the police officers and everything else. I said, but it's. I don't want to say it's speculation, but it's.
Of course it is.
But it's.
By nature.
Yeah, it's just.
There's no way to change that.
No.
And it's almost. I mean, look at how many times we've been told that we're all going to burn up in a fiery flood with climate change. By 10 years from now. I've been doing that since I was in elementary school.
Right.
Or except back then it was actually a nice. But modeling is modeling, and it's.
Yeah, I watched the after tomorrow.
Oh. Modeling is modeling. That's all it is.
I kind of had to tell you. I'm just saying, state law does not allow us to use 100% of the projected tax revenue from property. We're not allowed to use 100% budget. So you always do conservative. Anytime you do anything, you're going to be conservative. You're going to understate revenue, you're going to overstate cost. That's what you do. And criticize them for lack of transparency because you're dropping to 5%.
Oh, I know. And
we really should have an IQ test in this building.
Yeah. And Mr. Dunn said when he first did his one, considered conservative, had a $50 million appraisal. That was what, 2 years ago, he said? Now, it's just dollar change. It is nothing. So that's it. Nothing changes the value of the dollar.
And if you want to see why I interjected myself so much into this process more than I do normally in the development, it was that battle that occurred right there between me and Rob.
I was actually very curious about that.
And whoever wants to sit down, I can go over it.
I would like to sometime.
Yeah, just whatever. Yeah, whatever.
Because I did notice that you were stepping in more than you did have anything else.
I stepped in and
I'm like, I've been in the back of my mind thinking,
because of that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, because it was going nowhere and it was
getting more and more
nasty.
Contentious.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even take. We could do it after meeting night and say something else. I mean, because I'm not going to go through all my emails unless you want to know about the details of it. But I
mentioned it briefly, and I mentioned it very nicely. But in that meeting that with developer and staff, they promised they were going to develop, they were going to put together a major financial study. And then as we were walking out of the room, Mr. Perrick said, I'm not ready. You just said you would. I mean, that was a big turnoff for me. I've watched it. And I've listened to my wife rant about it.
There's probably your wife was one of them, maybe 2 or 3 other people that came up to me, board members, and said that Rob didn't hold all that. It didn't stack up.
Teresa listened to her own meeting over again and made notes and then summarized those notes for me because she was so upset by his negative
And it was,
Things he set up.
honestly, it all came down to, they should have, in my opinion, never submitted a rezoning application. And that's what it was. Because they, at the same time they submitted what plan change, which they should have submitted, really. But that was the one thing we didn't focus on. Then they submitted a rezoning application. And the rezoning application had blanks in it. It didn't have the site plan. It had the automall traffic study tax. And that is it. You would say, you need a site plan. I said, you don't need a site plan. You need a site plan for zoning, but not for a comp plan. That's, and I started, you see the emails going back and forth.
Right.
Eventually I just stopped in and said, look, we're doing it this way. We're focusing on this issue. I don't care about the site plan. I don't care about all this other stuff. So I decided to tell everybody, this is how, and that's what happened. That's why I rejected myself. And then I got to a point, I mean, Rob told us, don't stop the music. He told us one thing, stop the music. I can show you the thing right
I've got that email.
Yeah. And then he did the thing where he sent a drawing, like drew the boxes for something. The next morning, I called Mark Foster, not to criticize, I was actually right. He's treated it. I said, is there a problem that he's got going on? I need to be aware of it. That's not what I see people do, and I certainly don't see that in the public. It was just, yeah. Mark's going to be, I don't know what happened, and Mark kind of worked his way out, and I worked his way in, whatever. And then eventually I just saw this, that kind of dialogue.
Right.
And that's when I came in.
Evolved rapidly.
Yeah, you could see the emails. And I just got involved. I said, this is what I was, and I was pushing to get to this point. Because exactly. And I was actually at the point where we had a Zoom meeting on it. I mean, they were going to do something, and they said, oh, we'll get you this information. He said, I didn't have it by email. I said, just so you know, I ain't got anything on it. Do you need something from me? I just want to make sure you're not waiting on me, because I didn't want them saying, stand back and blaming or anything like that. So that's why I interjected myself. Way more than I ever do. Just push it.
She's trying to look at, she's trying to scalp on your chat.
Oh, yeah, she's trying to steal it, but she can't turn it down.
You gotta give me your report next meeting. You need stuff, people. I mean, all you need is the fingernails and
Used to be I could do this and people would hear that horrible creaking sound. Where's Heather? I really don't think Rick's going to come back, but where's Heather? Yeah. I can't hear you. He's frustrated. Just like he said, sees this as being the one opportunity he had to actually make progress. I still don't see Heather.
She's in the back.
Oh, there she is in the back. Oh, in the back. I thought she was in the bathroom. I don't think she hears it. She definitely hears issues.
She looks a couple of times. She's trying to keep the light on.
I didn't move fast. I was gonna second his motion just about the time I got here.
Oh, really? I didn't see you. Usually I'm a cat's out of the corner of my eye.
I forgot the mics weren't working. I should have just said it.
Yeah. I'm gonna shake this.
This is for her zone report.
Okay. All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry that was a longer recess than I anticipated, but that had been a tense time, and some of those conversations I felt were very healthy and helpful. Next on the agenda is, if I can find my place, old business, new business.
We're down to quasi-judicial.
Down to quasi-judicial. Does anybody have any ex parte communications to report?
None.
I have none as well. There are 4 properties before us. Commissioner Eckert, I believe you said there was one that was,
A couple of them I got questions about, but,
should we take them one at a time or?
yeah, probably you could do it one at a time.
All right, let's, item A, 154 North Lakeview. Do we have a motion to accept or deny?
Sorry, one more time on the address, I might have these on order.
154 North Lakeview.
Okay, that is what I got as lot one, as A.
Well, did I maybe?
You going them out of order?
Oh, I'm looking at, sorry. I had the wrong agenda in front of me. I had the one from the minutes. Sorry. Item A, Lot 1, Faith Grove. So it is Lot 1, it's the first one.
128 East Grade.
Do I have a motion to approve or deny? The recommendation of the historic board is to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion a motion and a second to approve. Lot 1 of Faith Grove. Any discussion?
My concern on anything going in that area is how close the houses are to the high water line on the lake, so that's the way I'll be going. I wasn't loud enough? Somebody's, oh, okay. My concern on the houses going in that area are how close some of them are to the lake that's there. So that's why I wanted them all done separately. This happens to be one of the one that's very close to the lake.
Any further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Ariel, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah.
You have the floor. And let me say, the mics aren't working, so you're leaning in good, but you got to just speak up for us.
Old habit. I've been working with Faith Construction Company on this, so just so you know, we're not related to this, it says we are not. We jokingly, I don't know, like, we have to, but we're not really. All of these have to be, the back of it has to be 75 feet from the high water mark. And in the original civil plan, all of that was addressed. So, and there's a swale that's significant. If you go and look at the property, there's a huge swale. It's actually not on any of these properties. So that property line is not the lake. It's nowhere near the lake. So, and yes, it is, this one is closer, so is lot 10. But all of those issues about being near the water have been addressed on the civil plan. So that was addressed before.
Yeah, I know, that's why, I know the difference in it, that's why
Okay.
I'm just concerned about how close it is and the potential with the past hurricanes floodings that we had and its potential, even though there's a retention pond.
But all of these are on stem wall and moving off the ground like full construction, so that's really helped.
Good. Any further discussion? Thank you. No. I'll call the question. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
No.
There's one dissenting vote from Commissioner Eckert, just for the record.
Yeah.
But the motion carries. Next is Lot 5, Faith Grove, which is 128 East Craig Avenue. I have a motion for approval or denial.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Next is Lot 6, 128 East Craig Avenue.
No, this was on Lakeview. I think the last one was on Lakeview too.
Motion to approve.
Actually, they both say 128 in my packet. But anyway, this is lot 6. I may not have the exact address, but it is lot 6 of the Faith Grove development. We have a motion to approve. Did I hear a second?
Second.
And a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next is lot 9, Faith Grove. Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the certificate of appropriateness for lot 9. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Now we have commission reports by zone. Zone 1.
Okay,
And-
thank you very much. I have passed out some pictures that I wanted to bring up in reference to Arbor Day. I've been trying to work with staff to see, to put something in front of you today. I would like to see us do some type of tree giveaway. That's been, as a common thing in other cities and governments, some businesses. And there are several options that are available to us. One that we found was a scarlet oak. Those, through my research, do not fare well here unless you're a green thumb. And if you're like me, you're gonna kill that thing. So I looked for other options, and the options in front of you are for hardiness zone 10, which is where we are, but they are significantly more. It's 600 of the scarlet oaks for $800. I think it's about right. But these are approximately $10 a piece. So I kind of just wanted to see what if we had a consensus that a giveaway would be a good idea, and my thoughts were we could do it at the market in the park. I've already talked with the garden club and the lake committee. Both are agreeable to help with handing out whatever if we do move forward. So I thought it would be a nice little round circle of people getting involved. They could also help pick them up. The lake committee more so than the garden club is what I was advised. So any thoughts from y'all are welcome.
I have two. One is, did you have a thought on how much you wanted to throw at this funding wise? And two, how would we go about deciding, how many cypress to get and how many oaks to get, et cetera, et cetera? Do we canvass the people first and get an idea of what they want, or do we just indiscriminately just pick what we want to buy and then let people take what they want?
So I was doing a bit of research on how successful Arbor Day tree giveaways are. Volusia County has already met their quota of the ones, or their, maybe I'm using the wrong word, but they said, hey, we have this many, sign up for them, and once they come in, you get them. They are already sold out in those terms. So in reference to the ratio of population, I believe it's about a 35% turnout for these. So I would suggest around that mark. But I don't know what you all are comfortable with spending in reference to that. I think we had talked about possibly 100 trees, but I don't know that that's necessarily, I think the demand for them will be larger, but I don't know that if we're gonna be comfortable, since this is, the first year we're kind of throwing it out there. So that's why I kind of just wanted to discuss and see how you all felt about that number.
Well, it is kind of necessary for us to have a jumping off point as to volume. I'm leaning towards a fairly significant giveaway. I like the idea, but we do need something to actually vote And I'm assuming at this point, a couple of things that went through my mind is, it's obviously not a budgeted item, but we could use ARPA funds for this. It would be a perfect thing to use ARPA funds for, to kick off this thing, and then next year we can get it in the budget. Just a thought. But I'm sure you put the math to it at some point, as the way your mind works. Did you, with those 100 or so that you were thinking about giving away, what numbers did you come up with?
I was thinking closer to 300, but that's about $3,000 as opposed to the 1,000 that we suggested. And I don't know if we're comfortable with going that high since it isn't a budgeted item. This is the first year.
I don't
So
mind.
I didn't want to put that out there, that
Yeah,
number without talking to you.
I don't mind split the difference. I'd put a motion on the table to reserve $2,000 of the ARPA funds for this project.
I have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? Have a motion and a second to reserve $2,000 of the ARPA funds towards this project of a tree giveaway for Arbor Day. Any
Yes.
further discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Eckert.
Have you gotten with any of the county organizations? Because there was one that just had one over in D-Land at the Stetson Swimming Center, and they were at Deltona, and I believe 2 places on the east side. And every resident that showed up, and they had a line of them out there at the Deltona Library, were given 2 for nothing. And the way the pots and everything, they didn't look like they bought them, looked like they got them from a place that grows the plants and everything.
Right.
So, I mean, have you checked with any of the organizations that do that? Maybe they could have one of their spots here in Lake Helen instead of elsewhere.
Right, so we did, I looked into the Longleaf Foundation and the Arbor Day Foundation we were looking at through.
Plus, Duke Energy had a giveaway program too. And they were sold out in 24 hours. There were 1,000 trees they were giving away.
And Department of Forestry has, if you want long needle pine trees, longleaf pine trees, you can get them from them for nothing.
I would certainly, that was going to be one thing I was going to add to this list, would be some longleaf pines.
Right.
Historically, Lake Helen is a pine preserve, and longleaf pines in particular. So I think that would be a great thing to add to it. Certainly, we can get it for nothing.
Right, that was one of the things that we were exploring, and I would like to see that happen, absolutely, because it is historically in this area. I wanted to stick to the native trees that will do well, and so I would definitely like to continue exploring free options with staff, but if we do not come up with those, would it, wanted to see if it would be agreeable to move forward with some of the ones that we found from the Arbor Day Foundation.
Well, as part of this motion, or perhaps it would need to be an amendment to the motion at this point, would you like to be in charge of organizing that and bringing it back and just following through with that budget, and whatever you put together would have our blessing?
Tabling this for now.
Well, not really tabling, but just empowering her with a $2,000 budget.
This would give her more chance to come back with more information on it. Plus, it could be something that could get tied into, if we're going to do a Lake Helen cleanup day, it could be tied in with that also.
When is Arbor Day, by the way?
April 28th. So I proposed the giveaway would be the 29th, that Saturday. Arbor Day is on a Friday. So I think traditionally we do a resolution at that meeting in April, and then we do a reading out front and sign the resolution on that day. And then I thought the giveaway would be more effective during non-business hours.
But the motion that's on the table is just an amount of money that we can spend, not to exceed. So if staff can, or assisting staff can find the product for free, and we don't have to spend the money, fine, but I'm okay with spending up to a couple $1,000.
Wording it that way sounds great, yeah.
So the original motion was to budget or to set aside $2,000 of the ARPA funds,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed $2,000 of the ARPA funds to, as a budget for this project. My understanding of a budget is it gives you the power to spend the money, but it doesn't create a necessity to spend the money. Certainly if staff can fulfill this project without spending the money, I'm sure they will. But I think the motion certainly works that way. Any additional discussion or questions? I'll call the question then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no.
Nope.
Motion carries.
Thank you all for entertaining me. Appreciate it.
I'd like the slide of Francis.
Yeah.
I might get a couple of those.
I had one more thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is just for conversation. I'd like to bring it back on another meeting, but I've been approached in my zone about fireworks and our laws around fireworks in the city. And it was suggested that we maybe amend our laws around the larger fireworks and prohibiting them. And I think DeLand, was it DeLand that, Lee, could you help me, was it DeLand that does the same that we were talking about? Had amended it to where it's not a bigger,
I just recall
bigger
talking
ones.
to the chief about, the state at one point outlawed anything that exploded or went up in the air. I understand that's when amended at state level.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Is this already regulated at state level?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So-
I think
so
the
it's
state
not about-
also, the state, I think, also opened up that you don't have to be a farmer or a miner anymore. You can be just a resident, you can buy the fireworks.
You can buy them and the tax we leave it, shoot them off in July 4th.
So I don't know that we need to change regulation, as maybe we just need to pay a little more attention to enforcement. If that's what, would that solve the
Is there
issue?
some way that somebody can do a survey or something of the cities and find out if they have any restrictions on size or something like that?
And the first question, are they allowed to have any restrictions? I think, since the state regulates them.
Right.
Yeah, but they might allow an allowance for size, so maybe Scott could look that up and see if there's a limit on size.
I'm trying to remember, I'm just trying to look up under state law while y'all were talking. One of the cities I represented, one of the things that happens is sometimes we adopt regulations a long time ago, and technology advances, and so you regulate these certain types of fireworks. And now the regulations have changed so much, and the types of fireworks have changed so much that the regulations really
Don't
are
exist.
not applicable anymore to what the current market has. I know the city that this particular city just decided to appeal the regulations and just go straight with state law. Because it was easier to do it by them. But let me, the key question is, are we preempted by state law
Yeah.
to not have regulations, or are we allowed to have more stringent regulations than what state law has? And if we are allowed to have more stringent regulations, then we can see what other jurisdictions have in terms of their regulations and what they enforce. I do remember, either with the chief or Rogers mentioned that, they did allow now fireworks July 4th, New Year's Eve, something like that. There were a couple days that they now allow them where they were, prohibited. And the prohibition is really kind of strict. I mean, you went in and you just said, yeah, I got a bird problem, I'm a farmer, you can buy whatever you want. And, they get fireworks and they don't, I'm guilty of doing it. I went in there, I had a bad farm problem on July 4th for many years. So, but it's just, they needed to, it was a restriction that was a ridiculous loophole that is allowed. Anybody can buy anything. So, but I'll see what the state law says now, and whether we have the authority to adopt more stringent, and I'll get y'all, I'll send a memo to Lee, he can share with all y'all. This is what the regulation is, I'll look at what our regulation is, and then see if there's other jurisdictions that have something more stringent.
Okay.
So the discussion that I was having was more so the citizens, there was more than one, there's several. They only wanted sparklers and,
Fountains.
maybe, I'm really bad at naming
Fountains,
fireworks, but the
probably
ones you
fountains.
hold and are pretty. So not any ones that blow up or could shoot out in any direction that could cause fire to the homes in the area. So,
All
That's
those
pretty much
sparklers.
a snap up.
right.
A sparkler or
The sparklers do a lot of damage on the Fourth of July.
Yeah.
I knew a kid who lost an eye to a sparkler. At some point, reasonable people should have the freedom to make intelligent decisions without them being regulated. So I'd like to hear Scott's research and come back and revisit.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Zone 2?
Lake Helena is getting a little busy. There's a lot of activities this weekend and next week. If anybody's interested and available, starting Saturday morning, 7:30, we have our breakfast at the Legion. Biscuits with sausage gravy or pancakes. Then at 8 a.m., we start our blood drive, which we have every 2 months. And then I think it's 1 o'clock when they have Heart for the Art or Art.
Our Red Heart is 12 to 4.
Okay, 12 to 4 at Hopkins Hall, the Art with a Heart.
It bears with that you have there. The unity in the community. Sounds good.
And then the Unity and Community Group have Give from the Heart on Wednesday, February 19th at 11 a.m. Or, no, they're going to have I guess they're going to have it at Massey James Center. No, on the 19th. Or did they change it? Oh, it's the 22nd now?
Yeah, it's the last.
Okay.
February 22nd?
February 22nd. But all the food that comes in from both of them go to the Lake Helena United Methodist Church outside the gates and the Massey James Center. So they're mostly looking for cereal, peanut butter, jelly, and assorted drinks, instant coffee, hot chocolate, tea, etc. But they'll accept any food that can be given out to the people that need it. That's all I got.
Zone 3? Nothing right now. Zone 4?
I'd like to ask for a couple of reports from the staff. Did we get a refund on that 15,000 that Ms. Fresca found as an overpayment at the last meeting?
Wasn't an overpayment.
That was a misunderstanding. I was going to actually talk about that. It's approximately a $39,000 total bill. There were 2 payments of 15,000. So there were 2 consecutive payments of 15,000, which looked like a double payment, but it wasn't. It was just 2 separate payments.
Okay, cool. And can you give us a report on the fuel tank that was discovered at Public Works? What were the violations and what did it cost to have it removed?
The diesel tank arrived somewhere around 2018, as I understand. And it was full of red diesel, which is off the road diesel. Red diesel, we don't pay the tax on it, so you cannot use public roads.
Right.
The tax goes towards that.
It arrived full? It arrived full?
No, it had 1,000 gallons in it when it was removed, And we have records of it having been filled up at least twice. So 1,000 gallons was in and used, 1,000 gallons remained. And it was $5,700 to remove it correctly. And it is gone, but it was not something we purchased. Apparently, it was a gift to the city.
What were the violations?
The violation is it's an unregistered tank. Anything, I think over 550 gallons, is it, of diesel?
It didn't have a vent with single wall.
But it has to
had
be registered
no
first.
containment, yeah. That's why it was registered.
Was the 5,700 a fine, or was that what it just cost?
That's what it cost to get rid of it. There was no harm.
So, why did it cost us $5,700 to get rid of probably $5,700 worth of product?
It has to be done a very specific way. It's considered hazardous waste. So they have to clean the water, they have to clean the tank, they have to take it somewhere special.
And
And you have to-
licensed, removal form, can't be anybody, it has to be registered with the state. So it was done correctly, and it's unfortunately, they're 5,700, but that's what it cost.
Okay, so no vent, no containment,
It was
and single wall. Okay. All right, that were the violations. And,
That was a potential violation, we were not charging anything. We disclosed-
well, that was the reason they gave for getting rid of it, though, right?
That's the reason they could not.
Okay. Okay. And then, I'm wondering if anybody's heard any kind of an update on FEMA, where we stand with that? Haven't heard a word.
Every Friday, we meet with
Every
our friends with FEMA.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we're exchanging Christmas cards very soon. But we do meet with them every Friday, and tomorrow will be no exception. Actually, they have changed their, they've not changed their program director now, but they've changed the program director's boss, who seems very agreeable to our situation, what we did and how we did it, and et cetera, et cetera. We have now collected all of the debris. There was no construction debris, just vegetative debris. All been collected. It's all been burned at Mitchell Park. Alan Jr. did, I think, an excellent job of leveling out all the ashes, covering it with dirt. Mitchell Park looks much better because of the activity there, which you might expect because of they burnt it. It actually produced an improvement, I think, for the park. But we now are in the process of documenting and having all the documents to them so they get reimbursed. They apparently, last Friday, they told us that they're getting pressure from, they have 4 senators across the United States that have to review everything sent into them by whatever disaster team is operating for whatever disaster anyway. And they've been getting pressure from that group in Virginia to wrap up these projects. And we have one of the smallest ones by far. So I expect we're going to have ours wrapped up fairly quickly. And I would think we probably could get a reimbursement by June or July. Approximate cost of $150,000 is what it cost was to the city for both Nicole and me.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'm just curious with this tank of diesel fuel, had we handled it differently and just anybody in town that had a diesel tractor that wanted it filled up for free, we just could have given it away and it didn't cost us $5,700 to get rid of it? Had we gone down a different path?
I believe they said it was illegal to pump from, didn't they?
They advised us not to pump out of it.
They said it
thought
was
dangerous.
unstable, yeah.
Once the EPA was involved,
That's my question.
I understand your question. That's why I was kind of saying that. Yes, once they were involved, they came in with their overkill, if you will, approach, and that's who they are. That's
Well,
understandable.
next time if we see a violation out there, can we just please maybe try to handle it in-house first so we don't have.
It was in-house.
Not
I
really.
didn't call
I didn't say you did.
them. I'm just saying it was in-house.
Well,
So,
it's a,
Let me ask
did
you a
I
question.
bring that to you?
I don't know. how-
And say that tank was there and you said, oh, that's DEP?
I don't remember which came first. But let me ask a question. I understand diesel deteriorates if it's not used. Is that true?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Because we have not used that tank. We thought it was empty. It's been there for at least 2 years
Yeah.
and not used. So we thought it was empty. It turns out it was full to burn.
There was a reason that tank was there to begin with. Does that reason still exist? Do we need to build a containment cell out there? Do we need to do something different so
We
we
could
can?
have a separate 550 gallon tank.
Yes, but my understanding is that there was a time when that tank was not enough, and that's why that tank was loaned to the city or donated or whatever.
We had gone through a pretty hefty hurricane season back then,
Yes,
and they didn't have enough fuel for everything.
Yep.
So, Big Dog donated that tank for the use, and it was only supposed to have fuel in it during the hurricane season and then emptied after each hurricane season. But they were supposed to use the fuel in the tractors and everything to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Well, but once EPA gets involved with it, then you got restrictions and you can't empty it out yourself. You gotta follow their rules.
yeah, I understand that.
yeah. Hopefully it won't happen again. I was thinking about the same thing. Do we need to get a tank that is certified? But that'll be a call for another day, and perhaps if we ever get a public works director, they'll ask for one.
Get a larger tank, replace the one that's there.
Is a single wall tank allowed if it's in a containment cell?
I don't believe it is.
Somebody needs to find out what the regulations are, because if we are in this situation again, I don't want to be put in a situation where a friend of the city can't donate us something, so we have the fuel that we need to continue to run the city. Because if I remember correctly, it was difficult getting any kind of fuel for almost a week here. And it's something to do with the storm that went in Texas, and refineries were shut down from producing, and they didn't, all kinds of places didn't have fuel around, so.
Yeah, once you get, a tank and you gotta build a containment thing and everything, there's new restrictions to where you gotta go down so far in the dirt, put a barrier that the fuel can't go through, but the water can.
Well, I've built concrete containment, I've built concrete containment centers. I've got them underneath all of my fuel things that.
Yeah, but they're a little bit more than just concrete anymore.
I'm sure the regulations are out there somewhere.
Not the ones that we've been building, Roger. Not building for municipalities all over the state, so I guess it could have changed in the last 5 years. I don't know. Because I know some of them are just liners.
Yeah.
But the ones that are made out of concrete.
Well, I know you can't use steel in the ground anymore. They have to be fiberglass, plastic, polymer, or whatever they call that stuff.
Okay. Moving on.
Okay, so we've had reports from 1, 2, 3, and 4. I did have a couple of questions, and want to remind everybody again of the Lake Island Cleanup Day on March 20. I can't even read my own writing. 25th or 26th?
Saturday, 25th.
Saturday the 25th. So I remind everybody of that, rather inartfully, sorry. And I did have a question, or I wanted to ask if either our city attorney or city administrator would like to bring us up to speed where we are on the ECHO involvement. We've had a couple of meetings, and if you would just bring us up to speed.
From what point?
Whatever point you would like to. Well, actually, at the last, let me. Yes, at the well, I don't know. At the last commission, I'm not sure the public does. So I'll start out, and then I'll turn it over to you. At the last commission meeting, we decided to withdraw our request for a change of scope. And at that point, the ECHO board voted to find us out of compliance and send us to the county council to get the money back from us for the grant. It was the ultimate intent of that. Find us in violation. And staff, however, the ECHO staff or the county staff continued conversations with the city, and those are ongoing. And that's kind of what I was wanting an update on, just as where those may be and what potential they may have.
Me and you and Lee met with the ECHO staff last Wednesday, and I thought the meeting went very well. ECHO staff had a list of things where they kind of compared what our ECHO grant says to what the agreement with Jim says, and some questions they had about it. But the bottom line is they want to work with us to have, to come up with something, continue to work with us. They are so yesterday, Lee and I met with key individuals at the gym, brought them up to speed on it, and I sent them last night. I sent Lee for today the ECHO guidebook and also the list of issues that they raised, ECHO staff raised, that was shared with the gyms. I've asked them to look over that and send to Lee, report to me, comments, things they think we can add to the ECHO. So I'm in the process of drafting a document right now that will be a response back. And it was almost like, because if you look at the ECHO grant, there are these questions. And instead of trying to write something into a question, I just want to say, see Exhibit A, see Exhibit A. Exhibit A will just explain exactly what we're doing and just fit it into their questions. Whether or not they want it that way, we didn't talk about that, but it just seems easier to me to respond that way. ECHO staff would like to be able to go back to the ECHO board when they meet next week, the 17th, I guess next Thursday or Friday, I guess it means. And they are going to ask if the ECHO board will withdraw their motion to report that we're working with them so that they can continue to work with them. But even if the ECHO board doesn't want to withdraw their motion, ECHO staff had represented to us, you were there, Mayor, they said that they would continue to work with us to go up to the county council with the presentation. They made it very clear that the ECHO board is decided, the final decision is with the county council. And so we can agree that we would continue working together to meet, regardless of the ECHO board, right? We'll continue working together and be going to, the earliest we go to the county council will be March 21st. And then hopefully by then we would have something that the ECHO staff and us could recommend to the county council.
Thank you. I did just want to bring everybody up to speed, and I've learned some stuff too.
That's kind of the goal right now.
Thank you. And appreciate your work on that, and also the gym. Appreciate them and their work as well, trying to make this whole thing work.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to expand the use of the facility, the Creative Arts Cafe, to hit the 4 areas the ECHO stands for. ECHO is E is environmental, C is cultural, H is historical, O is outdoor recreation. That's what ECHO stands for. So we're trying to expand what the gyms will do, and maybe in coordination with us, instead of what it's looking like right now. We will be coming back with a new management agreement, have to by May 1st. That's when their management agreement comes up. And we're looking at something that there will be certain things that we're in charge of, we're proposing right now, that the city be in charge of certain things, and the gyms will be in charge of certain things. It seems like the museum may be better suited for the city to be in charge of the museum aspect of it, as opposed to the gym. So there's some things that we will work jointly on. One of the things that I think we need to try to get focused down there, just to stay in compliance with ECHO, is arts and crafts, art show. That should be the primary designation for art shows. Now, that is something both the gyms and the city and maybe other organizations can try to bring all the art shows down there. We can try to have local artists display their artwork or have showings of their artwork in that facility. So those are things that we're trying to add to what the gym. And what the best thing I thought that came out of the meeting with ECHO staff is they're not asking us to take away anything that we're doing, even if they don't think it meets ECHO. They're saying you can do all these things. We just want you to add some things that fit into ECHO along with what you're doing. So they're not saying Young Life can't go there because it's not ECHO. They're saying Young Life is fine, but have some other things there that we can say clearly meet ECHO, and we can do non-ECHO things. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is our workshop meeting for the stormwater master plan that part was canceled because of COVID. And we need to reschedule and again, try and have a stormwater master plan workshop so that we can educate ourselves on exactly what it means, get together with our city engineer, have him explain it to us, and hopefully move forward with that, or not, whatever the commission decides to do. So are you commissioners interested in another workshop to do stormwater master plan? I assume we all are.
Yes. That many more.
And that's right. We also can add some other things to that workshop. Is there a good time? I had in mind maybe I'm looking at more towards the middle or end of March. The rest of this month for me is quite full. I could probably squeeze it in though if we feel any urgency on that. Do I have any other thoughts? Do we have any urgency on it? I mean, I don't really think we do, but.
Well, yes and no. There's the stormwater master plan, which we need to have input and discussion with the commission and finally adoption of the master plan, by not just the draft. That'll become the basis for activities dealing with construction of improvements and loan applications through the SRM to the state. We also need to have, we've never had a professionally produced assessment rate study for stormwater. And of course, that rate study would be based on whatever the commission feels is appropriate to do with whatever time frame they want to do it. So we're going to have that discussion with the commission. So what I'm saying is, in the assessments, last year we want to make sure we don't have a situation probably in the public, the property appraiser's calendar of the last day.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Lee, but I thought we had talked about the assessment survey, or what'd you call that?
Rate study?
Rate study, yeah. I thought we had a discussion that we were going to go forward with that, or were you supposed to bring?
I have a proposal, yes.
You have a proposal?
Yeah, I have one both water and stormwater.
Okay.
But I want to explain it to the commission in an informal way.
Okay. The workshop meeting.
Regular agenda,
Okay. No, I don't know that we have a choice.
No, we really don't.
Right, because.
We don't for a couple of reasons, actually. We don't have the revenue, but we also don't have the legality of study back up.
Well, we can support rather than just throwing darts at a board, because we can say, okay, we have this much worth of work to do, and this is how many people we got to pay, and this is what we need to kind of do. But to have a professional come in and say, okay, this is what other municipalities are doing based on your situation.
And coming up with the number we need in terms of revenue is relatively easy. The trick is how you apportion those costs based on the benefits of the property. And you need to do fairly thorough investigation of the types of properties you have in the pervious area, residential versus
commercial and yada, yada, yada.
Gotcha.
So anyway, but we've got that one.
And that's if we seek to fund that through a special assessment. If we were to simply fund it through ad valorem taxes, it would just be, or the way, not ad valorem, but, well, we could fund it, well, initially we were gonna fund our stormwater through, county tax collection process.
Well, that's an assessment.
So that was a special assessment which would require all of these, because that's not what we were doing when we initially put that through. Yes, yes, it is an assessment, but it's not one that's prorated based on property demands and whatnot. It was.
All assessments are based on the benefit to the property or the service it is. You just don't see it necessarily in the back of the study how you appropriate it. Or typical single family home would have one charge, commercial property with a certain type of another charge, and that's just portioned out for all the properties in the city. But that portion calculation is done by the professionals who know what can be.
And where was that done? Because we raised the stormwater tax a little bit.
That was.
So who did that study?
That's part of the problem. We've never done a professional study. I know.
But we still have a stormwater tax, and so how can that be? Where am I missing the discord here?
We have a stormwater assessment.
Right.
I don't know if anybody knows how the assessment was ever initially calculated. You know?
Not how it was calculated, but it was how it started. Is we had a bunch of stormwater work done on our bond, and to pay that bond back, they just assessed everybody equal amount over a period of time. And then when that was done, they continued it on, but they didn't increase it over the years. And now we're realizing we're behind the 8 ball again. And raising it, they limit how far it can be raised now. So the amount that we actually needed, we would have been at if they would have raised it over the years. But now we're caught.
We're caught and we're playing catch up, sort of.
Yes.
There is a way for the assessment. Remember we talked about assessments briefly. You have to levy or assess the fee, assessment based on the benefits of the property.
Right.
It's the benefits of the property that's an analysis that the experts do to come up with a formula in terms of how we allocate it. And so they usually treat all single family homes the same, and then off of that, they get an ELU, which is the equivalent living to a home. So they come up with an impact, and they say, okay, this commercial property has 2 or 3 ELUs or something like that to come up with how much we charge each property. But the concern, and I mentioned a couple times that we need it, I think your assessment right now is so low nobody cares.
Correct.
It's not worth going to litigate. But when you're going to raise it as much as we talked about last year, and I believe
From $4 to $12 a month, approximately.
yeah, there was somebody that was going to go up to 5,000 a year or something like that. Maybe Ivy Pond or somebody came up and spoke about how much it was. And
I believe it was Ivy.
Stormwater system on their property. That's when you start getting people who now might be worth suing them.
Yeah.
You know, the challenge. So my advice would be to make sure we have a defendable.
I have no problem with that. I just, that's where we,
And that's where but it's an assessment.
that's where the disconnect was, is that we were moving forward with it, but you're saying probably what we were doing might have been indefensible at some point if it had been challenged. And that's very reasonable.
Because I don't know how they came up with it. You know,
Right.
I don't know what the allocation is.
So that will be part of our workshop, is to go through all of that. It's obviously,
And honestly, I would do it. I would actually do that sooner. 'Cause I don't know how long the study's going to take.
right.
I mean,
Well, how quickly-
increase the assessment for this upcoming year, we're going to need to know that number by this summer or something.
Lee, did you say you had a proposal for what the study would cost?
Yes.
And how much?
25,000 for the.
Did he say 45?
25,000.
25?
And I think it's 15,000 for the water rate study, basically saying.
Well, but the water rate we collect is a user fee. And so that's really a totally different issue than your
So are those two different things?
There are different ways that we collect assessments, that we call very legalistic, you have to go to the property appraiser, the tax collector, and it's apportionment of benefits of property. The water rate study is a very simple calculation of how much water you use, and how does that fit into your allocation of
Okay.
water resources, blah, blah, blah.
Don't we have water rates already established?
We do.
But we need to do a study anyway?
No, for stormwater, we need to do.
Well,
a
that's
study.
what I'm saying. It sounds like there's two different issues and one's 10,000, one's 15,000.
No.
We don't know of any cases for water rate study. Somebody created it sometime, and we don't know what the basis of that is. As an example, typically, a minimum, rate that we have, which is now $81 a quarter, will have a minimum consumption with it. For $81, you would get
X number of gallons.
Yeah, you get an availability of the system, and then you get like 2,000 gallons of water. And then your rates beyond that decline, based on the.
So we can't just look at other municipalities and what they charge and do some averaging, and that's not defensible?
Yeah, you can. It's not as critical as an assessment, because an assessment is a very legal process that can be challenged.
Sure.
A water rate study, it's has to be pretty arbitrary before somebody would really be able to challenge it.
Yeah, that's why I've no problem spending the money on a study for stormwater. I do have a problem with the study for water rate.
One big difference is you can do your water rate study anytime throughout the year, and then you implement it anytime throughout the year, especially with notice. Your assessment is only done once a year. So if we don't get the study on the assessment done this year, then we have a whole another year.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying, I.
Sooner
I
rather
can
than later.
Yeah, I can see acting on doing the stormwater study, but I don't. Is it one study and they're gonna do both of them and we don't have a
No, there's
choice?
two separate studies, proposed by the same company, you could do either or both. You don't have to do them all at the same time. And the one, I think that both Scott and I are concerned with most is the assessment study.
For the
other
stormwater.
one's kind of tying a loose end, if we don't have anything we can point to.
Yeah.
With the rate study.
Well, I don't have a problem going forward with the stormwater, which you said was 10,000?
No, that one is, 25.
That one alone is
I guess
25,000.
what he probably should do is,
But I want to explain to you, and I'm going to bring in the person who actually do it, Mason talk to you about that as well. It's a process I think we should understand why it's needed. how it's
Okay.
done.
I think as part of the workshop, we'll get a full explanation of that.
The mayor and I have talked about doing key workshops of the water, sewer, rate studies, all those things that we put together and bring everybody up to speed. Just my only concern was that I know you're busy, Mayor, but quicker we could do it better.
Okay. I do understand that need. Commissioner Eckert, you raised.
There's one of the companies, and I don't know if they're in Winter Springs, Winter Park, Orange Park, or whatever, them in Central Florida. And I don't know if it's rural water or US water or whatever. They've already got a rate study that they have online, and you can see everybody's except ours. We're not, for some reason, we're not on their list, but you can see all the ones around us.
I think that's rural water.
Yeah, but you can see all the water rates that everybody has all around
And
us.
that, I was mentioning, that's the reason, it wouldn't be too terribly difficult to plagiarize some of that water stuff. It's not rocket science, even though they like to think it is. But the one that concerns us, given the study, the assessment for the program.
Well, in the sooner than category would be February 20th or 21st. Actually, 21st or 22nd, I can meet any one of those 3 days. February, yes. Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, February 20.
I'm not available on the 21st.
Okay.
Also depends on what time
My day is open. Well, actually, my afternoon is open on the 20th, and my whole day is open on the 22nd.
Why don't,
I'm good.
Which is better, Monday or Wednesday?
Either one's fine with me.
Well, let's do Wednesday, the 22nd, at 1 o'clock.
That works.
Wednesday, 22nd at 1 p.m.
I'm putting it on my calendar, I talked to you, I don't think I need to do that workshop,
Okay.
but I'll put it on my calendar, for some reason, something comes up, I need to be here, but, that doesn't sound like a topic.
I agree. Thank you. And my only other thing I was going to mention is I think we probably should hold the last $9,000 payment on the AV equipment for a little while. I did like the way it worked for a little while there. One meeting was pretty nice. But let's not pay that last invoice just yet. Over to City Administrator report.
And Mayor, under efficiency, the only item on I had a couple of announcements, but at the last meeting, you recall, we discussed the job description for the Public Works Director, Supervisor, and several suggestions were made concerning having the Class 3 license either at the time of application or availability or willingness rather to obtain one as time went on. We have since talked with the state. Scott has talked to them. I've talked to U.S. Water and the state as well. And it's, I think it's fair to say that if you stick with the state regulations, it will be very, very difficult for somebody who has no hours already in the process, the training process, to complete it within a 4-year period. They require 2,080 hours. So it's a matter of either we, I guess there's 3 options. Specify you have to have a license. Last time we put out this particular job description, we had 33 applications, 2 of them had a license. Or again, we could require one at the beginning. We could ask for people who have already some hours in and then build on those within a certain period of time. Or simply remove that obligation altogether. You don't have to have one. And continue to look for somebody down the road or somehow get into having one in some other way or form. Again, it's an option backing up U.S. Water, which has a contract with us. And it's up to the commission how we want to do it.
What I found talking to the state is there's a test that you take, and after that test, you have 4 years to accumulate the 2,080 hours. You can accumulate those hours with multiple employers. That does not have to be all the same employer, but the hours only accumulate for the time that the on-site plant operator, they're actually doing plant operation work under the direct supervision of the on-site plant operator. How much time your plant operator needs to be on site is dictated by your permit. And talking with Lee, we have 3 hours a week. So about 3 hours a week is what's required for our on-site, for U.S. Water to be on-site per our permit. So that would be someone could accumulate about 150 hours
A year, right. No,
There's not a chance.
no way that's happening.
You're not gonna get 2,080. So if it's not, you can't say, you can't use, if you're working here 40 hours a week, you can't use all 40 hours to apply for the 280. And it can only be that time you do when you're working for plant operation experience. And you can only do the plant, if you're not licensed, you can only do that if you have a permanent license holder on site.
Under direct supervision,
And
yeah.
the permit dictates how much time they have to be there. So really, there's no way 1, 2, really, or 4 years, you're really gonna get 2,000 in any case. Someone could
Not even
have
close.
less. Now, if somebody came here with 2,000 and maybe more, then yeah, that might be doable. But realistically, other than someone coming here with accumulation of a lot of hours, they're not going to be able to accumulate the hours to get the license
Okay.
within the time frame, given the limited amount of on-site requirements for our plant operator based on our permits.
Commissioner Eckert, you.
I know this thing has gone full circle. It's all the way back to where it was at the beginning. Can't a clause be added in there that if they've already completed their hours requirement, that if they can do the final part within a certain period of time, that they could still be on the list?
Yeah, we did that.
Because I know you lined out everything else except for having the license before they apply.
What concerns me is if we would really narrow down the applicant list, if we said you have to have one at the time of application. If you have hours accumulated, that would certainly open up the field. I'm not sure how much, but it would open up the field.
I don't think.
I think you could say that either you have a license or you are capable of getting a license when you enter employment.
Yeah.
And it's on them to be able to represent to us.
Right.
And to show how they would be able to do that, but.
And I don't, because of the difficulty in getting it, I don't mind going to the 24-month period like, you had recommended, because, to me, it's more important that we achieve the goal. It's going to be interesting to see if that actually happens and the person's still under our employ, or once they get it, do they go someplace else and then we're right back in the same situation all over again?
Right.
Well, we can do a document that says that, if we're paying for them to finish their license, we can do a form they got to sign that says that they must work with us for 2 hours or reimburse the city.
Right.
We do that with paramedics and everything in Deltona. Pay for them, and then they sign a contract that they got to work with the city for so long. Yeah.
But my point was, I don't think we need to talk about number of hours. All we need to do is say, you need to accomplish it to this period of time, because we already know if they don't have X number of hours already, it isn't going to happen. You follow me?
Yep.
So,
Or we simply, as I've said a couple of times, and I'm in a minority apparently, but that's okay. I'll say it again.
I agree with you.
I don't know how important this license is.
Yeah,
We contract with it, with US Water, and they are,
Well, we're forced to because we don't have it.
well, I understand that.
Right.
And
That's my point.
there's value in having it in-house. I will
Yeah.
never deny that.
Right.
But it's obviously not required, and it's apparently quite difficult to get. So, because we only had,
But if we don't have somebody that's either close to getting it or has it already, then we're still tied to US Water, waiting for them. If we have something occur, waiting for them to come from somewhere else to decide if that's going to be done now or a week from now.
and that's one of
We
the.
have a person to do it right then and there.
No, you're right. You're right. There's no question about the advantages to that.
But I agree with you. I think the managerial side of what they're bringing to the table in the big picture is more important than the license. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So how should we proceed is the question. How should we proceed to advertise?
What I think I'm hearing anyway is that we say, if you don't have a license, you need to obtain one within 24 months.
Be able to obtain one within 24 hours.
I would say
24
you need to
months.
be able to prove to us that you can obtain one within 24 months.
Which means they better be darn close.
Right.
And that is doable.
And honestly, that is what you're hearing. And like I say, I'm in the minority, but I think we're tying our hands too much.
The only other thing I think that you can, I think you might be able to do is, in the pay scale, the reward for finally getting the licenses, okay, your salary increases from this to this. And I don't know how, if you can do that in your, okay? Okay.
On this topic. Any other discussion or do you feel like you have
I think we do.
what direction? Okay, we do have, Ms. Frasca, did you want to address this?
For clarification,
I'm sorry, one moment.
we have the direction, and I presume you would approve of us going back out for the advertisements.
Yes.
Yes.
That's all.
Ms. Frasca?
Kelly Kraska, John Street. So my question is, where we're going right now, if I understand correctly, it's a little hard to hear. We're looking at an employee to come in with the C-class water operator's license for being able to obtain it within the 24
Months.
24 months?
That's our preference.
Okay. But are we paying them for the classes or whatever it is to obtain that over 24 months?
I didn't suggest that.
It's on the job training, it's not a class, I think a test. And then they have to have 2,080 hours of being supervised, doing plant operation work by somebody with a license.
Then they have to submit a whole bunch of documentation to the state.
But over 24 months, they're not able to do the job that someone with a C-class.
We would still have to contract with, in this case, US Water, but there are other companies as well. But they will be fulfilling that license requirement. I'm sorry.
We're always going to have that contract with
Correct. The C license was always inherently a backup that the city had, and it does allow us to do things immediatamente in emergent situations. So it is beneficial, very, very beneficial in that respect.
But wouldn't it be more cost us more to have someone who's working up to that
No.
C-class over 24 months?
No, probably not.
Is it a lower pay scale until that 24
Well,
months?
that's what I'm suggesting, yes.
It's an incentive is what we're suggesting that they have for that pay scale to push them to not wait.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to.
We understand and apologize for that. Okay, sorry, Mr. Administrator, back to you.
We have a couple of announcements. The first one is the Strawberry Festival. I sent you an email today with their beginning advertisements, and they're gearing up for that. We also have an application came today for the auto show. You remember we had an auto show for a number of years, and then COVID they stopped, and we had another one come in. Well, this is the original one, which everybody thought was the best one, I think. They want to come back, and we have a date for them. It's April 29th.
Wasn't there just an April 29th a minute ago?
It's
Or something else?
What was the other April thing? Arbor Day.
Okay.
I think that'll work.
That'll work.
So anyway, that is a great part. So we have those two events coming up. The other one we have, you recall, about a year ago, the city was notified by FRS that we would have to be paying a portion of my salary into the FRS, even though neither I nor the city would receive any benefit. And we retained the consul in Tallahassee. And the outcome of that now has been settled, that FRS has basically said, forget it, and they walk away. And they're a piece of work. Anyway, so I just wanted to let you know that matter is settled, and there's no charge to the city for anybody's salary.
That's a real big win. That's a big win.
If anytime you can make them, the state back down on something, they just feel strongly about it. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, that was, well, that's a big win monetarily for us as well.
I took a close eye on it in this legislative session. I'll do a close eye on it in this legislative session.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't doubt that.
we always do.
Tweaking some word or something.
Well, they passed two big ones today.
Did it?
Reedy Creek passed and,
Oh, did it?
yeah, it's going on to the next level. There was another one that they passed.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
I don't either. We're out of time.
To say that we had to pay, the city had to pay, even though he was not getting any benefits, it wasn't participating in it. And it was really age discrimination because they were saying, there's something called senior management opt-out, all managers are allowed not to opt out of FRS. And so I was asking, why can't he just opt out? Well, to opt out, you have to be in to be able to opt out. And because he retired,
He couldn't
never
be
go
in,
back in,
right?
so therefore he couldn't opt out. I said, well, that's age discrimination, because now you're telling us we can't hire a retiree because we can't go to a retirement plan. Because we're gonna have to pay 23% to the state, so he's only like 7% left over for him. Whereas if we hire someone who's not retired, they can get the full, they can opt out and we can pay them the full 30-something percent that we would normally pay up. So
How do you opt out of something that you're not in?
well, now you sound like that for us. Exactly. What they told me.
It's a special language in Tallahassee.
I mean, if you're not in, by definition, you are out.
But you didn't opt
So-
out. You just
We
were.
did not. You couldn't opt out if you weren't in.
You were-
Why
you
would
were-
you have to opt out if you're already out?
You need that very special opt.
Yes.
Here you go. So if you see any bill that mentions opt out or opt in or whatever,
Yeah.
we're gonna call that the DF.
That's interesting, Mayor.
Okay, well, I do have, for public forum, I do have two requests of Mr. Perrick and then Kelly Craftsman.
Ron Perrick, 451 West Michigan. I appreciate what you said about the sound system, that was on top of my list. Well, I saw that on the bills that you paid this month. You all review those before the meeting? You said no?
I thought you meant before they're paid, but yes, before the meeting.
Before the meeting, okay. Yeah, well, going back to this water and the supervisor rather, we need the Class C license. You know, we got leaks that stay leaking for over a month. You gotta have somebody on staff like he used to have. If he wants to come back, you should have him back. If he still has his, application, you should really consider that. Because you're on record for age discrimination. You're even warned by your attorney that you're going in the wrong direction. And people in the audience heard you say you don't want to hire him because he's too old.
No.
Life expectancy.
No.
All right, no, this is my time.
Okay, it is.
Uh,
But you don't mind,
Never paying, I mean,
you don't mind being corrected when
great
you
attorney here. He ran up a $30,000 bill that we paid for this month?
No.
Are you guys, we have trouble?
Sir, you're wrong, we covered 3 months.
But it doesn't say that, it says 30,000 needs to be paid this month.
Well, it covered-
Last month there wasn't a bill?
It would cover October, November, December.
Okay. Normally I see like 5,000 for you. 5,000,
Yeah,
6,000.
I'm saying that, I'm just letting you know that
Okay,
covers,
so now we're
that covers 3 months.
10,000. Okay.
Just telling you that covered 3 months.
We paid 10,000 to Mr. Patterson that did a terrible presentation. He just rambled, you couldn't understand what the hell he was talking about.
I don't disagree with
There
you.
was $10,000 wasted. Mr. Peterson did a study on that property, and he probably gave you the same numbers that he gave you. I do appreciate Mr. Morales, he's down to $2,000 a month, and we just approved these beautiful homes fake road there, so that's great. And then can we get an update on the water meters? We have not seen any water meters. And then also Melissa Park. Nobody's talked about Melissa Park for months. And then the other one was months and months and years ago, we talked about giving $5,000 for speed controls over there in the woods. But we're gonna get these signs with the flashing light. But we ended up with a couple stop signs, and I'm sure hope that did cost us $5,000. Why didn't we follow through with those speed control signs? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Perrick. Did you want to address that? You sounded like you did, or do you just want to let it go?
There you
go. Okay. On the meters, an update on that. We do still have our application for the SRF fund, and that's in the works. And when that is hopefully approved, which I believe it will be, we'll move forward on that. But we're just in the bureaucratic waiting game right now because of when their cycles are. And on Melissa Park, where are we on Melissa Park?
We just opened recall we put it out to bid.
Yep.
We received no bids.
Yep.
Right.
Now, we put it back out to bid, and today we received a bid during the opening. And actually, it's a company out of Mount Dora. And we were very impressed by them and their willingness to work with us on budgets and materials and brands of equipment. But we've not had a chance we opened at 2 o'clock this afternoon, so we've had no chance to really review them in any detail. But we're most encouraged by the fact that now at least have something working.
Good. That is a good report. Thank you. And the last thing, the question was speed control. We did receive those speed control devices, or not exactly the right word, I'm sure, but.
I don't know what happened to those.
But the speed control devices were about 5,000 or 7,000 apiece. So to do both sides of the road would be $14,000 for the eastbound, westbound, northbound, southbound traffic. I don't recall us ever saying anything just for a speed control sign.
I thought we had.
For city use, so that on Main Street, Summit, Lakeview, Armenia Road for the high speed, not for cycling.
I thought we were going to be able to get 3 or 4 of them for 6,000. There was a motion that we approved of some expenditure there. I don't remember the exact details.
There were 2 different types of these. One was the radar ones, and one was, I think, just I remember all that.
It was radar. It wasn't anything official. It just because of the calibration requirements and all those things. It wasn't for enforcement. It just would flash if you were going greater than, and it was pretty accurate.
We had them on Main Street for about a month. That was kind of a,
And now where are they?
It's just temporary. We do not have permanent.
Oh, okay.
Those were furnished by county, the one at Arm.
I did not understand that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Braska, thank you for your patience.
Billy Braska, John Street, Lake Helen. I wanted, Arbor Day, great idea. Might suggest trying to get a sponsor, maybe Duke Energy, as we've done it before for other cities, or Waste Pro, some of our big hitters. That would offset that cost and allow more money into ARPA for other projects. But I do think it's a nice idea. So my apologies as regards to the $15,000 before. It was a misunderstanding. I know that when I was up on the dais in October of 2021, I made the motion for Infinity AV at the cost of $21,500, and that died for lack of a motion. So when I hear that now that it was approved for $38,000, to me, I wouldn't even imagine if we didn't do it then. I thought that was too high of an amount. So I apologize for that. where did we put the utility truck, that was at Public Works? And are we still discussing on who's responsible for that? And I have one more question. Can we do something about the damage on our floor here? Our floor right behind, this desk is just, over time, scratches and scratches. Maybe we put down, after it's fixed, put down some plastic, protection.
It's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Right, and also, this door over here, and I'm just gonna mention it, it's, something's wrong with
It's
that.
deteriorating.
Just from looking at it, yeah, I don't even know if that's safe to go out through that door for fire purposes. I don't know about the stairs either, but definitely this door before, they find this door.
Thank you. Okay, I believe all matters have been brought before us and dealt with as best as possible. Any further discussion or concerns? We'll have staff get back with you. And I do believe we have a report pending on some of that at a future date.
So we can't keep going for another half hour, make it midnight?
No, I'd rather not. Hearing no objection, we adjourn. Oh.
I gotta work on something.
Good night.
Sir, you gotta work out for all of us.